All right. So here is our SAQ, right? So our SAQ is going to have like two chunks, is going to have one chunk just like kind of like our letter that we did the other day, right? So let's read. How does Jonathan Edwards use language to achieve his purpose? So language, some of the things that we identified yesterday in our annotations were like similes and metaphors, right? That's what we saw quite a bit. So that's going to be your choice. We'll do one today, and then you'll be able to do another one later or tomorrow. Your purpose. All right. Talk with your partner. Now, what do you believe is Jonathan Edwards' overall purpose of his sermon? So in the sermon, like this part that we read is about, let's say 20, 25 minutes of a 6-hour sermon. He does eventually get to the point where he basically says, like, there is salvation, you can change, you can be saved. All right? So that's out there. So it isn't just like hellfire and brimstone, everybody's going to hell, and then he leaves for the day. He actually gets to the point where he says, like, there is some way for you to be saved. Okay? All right. So with somebody around you, I want you to jot down a couple of things that you think his big purpose is for. Jonathan Edwards is preaching his sermon in order to show, in order to prove what? Ready, set, chat, figure it out, go.
He's trying to use fear to get them to join his religion. Exactly what she's saying yesterday. He's just trying to pull out the last. He's just trying to scare them. He knows all the his way is the best way.
It is their button. I mean, it's still, I would say it's still the Bible.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm starving. Yes, by the way. All right. What were some of the things that we said? I'm going to jot down some of the ideas. What did we say? Terrence?
He wants to make people feel like he's bigger than them.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yeah, I would jot him down. Leo?
He's using fear to persuade them into following him.
To follow him, you think?
His methods.
Follow God. The Bible?
Yeah, I mean, I would say not his methods, because his methods come from God, but I would say, like, to renew that faith.
Isn't he preaching to all followers already?
Yes, but he feels like they have strayed from the path. So I would say that it would be maybe I like the idea of fear, to persuade them to
Reinforce their faith?
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay. So let's write our first, actually I'm going to do this on a separate sheet of paper because I think it'll be easier. So this is going to be your first sentence, and then we'll copy over onto the box. So the first sentence is going to be, in his sermon, sinners in the hands of an angry God. Jonathan Edwards. What does he preach about? Preaches.
How God has control over them, even though they do what they do.
Bigger
How
picture.
they're all doing everything wrong, how he's the only one doing something right.
Bigger picture.
He's
Preaches about
God,
God's what?
wrath.
Yep. Because all those things that you said fall under the idea of God's wrath, right? In order to persuade them, or maybe in order to reinforce their faith in God, persuade them to let's say to reinforce their faith. To strengthen their faith, to reinforce their strength or faith to something. So this is this is either your assertion or thesis, depending on where what kind of thing we're writing. This, for us, is going to be our assertion because we're answering that question. So we say this part is what we would label your concrete. And the concrete is what you can put your finger on in the passage, like what you can go and put your finger on, right? Like you can touch it. Like a concrete noun is something that you can touch. In order to, it moves to that, this is the abstract. This is the big idea. This is his big purpose. So this is the abstract. That meaning that's the big idea. That's your first sentence. Tomorrow, I would say you just use this because you're still going to, he's not changing his idea. I would still use this as your first sentence tomorrow. You'll just use a different example. Now, we have to look at the language. Let's look at what simile or metaphor did we like the most from here, kind of early on. Talk with your partner, find one that you think is easy and that you don't want to analyze tomorrow. Talk with your partner, let's find one together, and then we'll do one together.
God's wrath. This one?
Yes.
We're supposed to find a simile or
Either one. I mean, simile or a metaphor. Either one. Find a comparison.
No. That's not.
This part is part of the sermon.
All right, what do y'all like? And I would say let's keep it between paragraphs 1 through 4.
I like the first part of paragraph 3.
The heavy as lead
Yeah.
and sink. I like that. I like the spider's web too, that you could do a rock. I like that too. I mean, then you also have the water in the dam, right?
Black cloud of God's wrath.
Yeah, I like the clouds. I like the clouds and the dreadful storm and the thunder. I kind of want to save, the bow and arrow one is really good, but I want to save that for tomorrow because I think y'all can do a really good job analyzing that yourself tomorrow. Let's do the black clouds. I like the weather thing because I think there's a lot in there that we can do. Okay, so I'm going to go to my planning sheet and I want to kind of show you. So when we talk about language and when we talk about, you're getting a little AP lesson here. When we talk about language and when we talk about like analyzing like a symbol or a metaphor, we got to look at it outside of the context of the passage. So I'm going to take, let's see, I like this and I like the idea of black clouds of wrath, the dreadful storm, big with thunder. Okay, so I'm going to jot down some of the pieces of evidence. So black clouds of God's wrath, the dreadful storm, full of dreadful storm. Oops, and there's and. Big with thunder. And we move to the restraining hand of God. Okay. All right. I know it looks like a lot of evidence. I'll show you how that we're going to do that. Because if we were to put that in a piece of evidence, we usually try to take a piece of evidence only that's like a line, line and a half, no more, and that's like 2.5 lines. So that's a little too much. So let's look at this. When we look at the pieces and parts, black clouds are representing God's wrath, right? When you see black clouds outside of the context of this passage, what do you think? What do you feel?
Storm is coming.
Okay, so there's... What'd you say? Tay, you're right. You're right. What'd you say? What'd y'all say?
Something bad's coming.
Yeah. Can you do anything to stop that? No. I mean, because you're talking about nature, right? So you can't control it. What do you think of when you think of a dreadful storm? Like, what's happening?
Like thunder. Not thunder.
Well, you already have that next.
Yeah.
What do you think of when you think of a dreadful storm?
Flooding.
What?
Hurricane.
So again, I think that goes with the idea that it's like something that you can't control. Can you prepare for it? I mean, you can. When you hear thunder, think of those times where it's like quiet and still, and then all of a sudden you hear that loud like pop of thunder, right? The kind that kind of like rattles your house, right? How do you feel?
Surprise.
Worried.
Okay, and that storm like equals like the power that God has over us, right? Notice this idea of like it bursting forward, right? That's the idea that it's like all of a sudden, not expected. All right. You ready? Ew. All right, ready? So here's what I do. A lot of times when you guys provide a piece of evidence, whether it be something that's nonfiction like this, that's a speech, or whether it be like fiction, that's like a piece of text from like a play that we're about to read or something about a character, what you end up doing is you end up giving me a summary. You end up giving me a summary of your piece of evidence. That is not right. So what I do is I brainstorm, like, what do these ideas mean outside the context of the passage? That gives me, these are all the things now that I can say about it without summary of it, right? Okay. So remember when you embed text, we have to look at like what's coming prior to it. So this is in paragraph 3, right? So what is he describing or talking about? Not God's wrath, but what is he kind of talking about in paragraphs 1 and 2 and the beginning of 3? Skim over it, right? So in the first part of the excerpt, Edwards is talking about what? Talk with your friend. Look at some of the things that we jotted down on the sides. Talk with your friends, go. All right, what'd y'all say? In the first part of the excerpt, he's what?
He's telling us how stupid we are.
Okay. Edwards explains how ignorant the Puritans are of what? Of, yeah, we don't want to say God's wrath again because we already said that, right? Of God's power. There you go. Okay. He compares the black clouds comma, dreadful storm. I guess we will put and, sorry. And the dreadful storm, and is it and big with thunder? Dreadful storm.
Yeah, it is and big.
I'm trying to say like I don't like that big with thunder. He compares the black clouds and the dreadful storm and big with thunder. I don't like that. Big with thunder to I'm going to state God's power again, but I don't like that. Okay. The reference to nature and weather shows the congregation that something bad is coming. And they have no way of controlling it. Okay, that explains like the pieces and parts of that metaphor, right? And how do we get that? Because we have our words up here that I'm kind of stealing from, right? All right, now, my next part is I have to say, like, so what? So how does this prove the big idea? And our big idea is that it's going to get them back to their faith, right? Like the strength in their faith. How does that idea of not being able to control nature, not being able to control what's about to happen to them, how does that get them back to a strength in their faith?
It doesn't move them back into strength, it just gets them in the direction of like, it scares them into doing what they were supposed
Why?
to do. Well, because they're scared of the storm.
Fear of
God.
death.
They want to have control.
They don't
of
wanna
their
go to,
faith, of their
Okay, I love it. I'm pulling it all together. Okay. This helps the congregation. No, I wouldn't say this helps. This encourages them or scares them. Either one. The congregation. Say what y'all said again to because. Hey, come on in. Because what? This helps the congregation because what?
because they want control of their afterlife, I guess.
Their what?
Their afterlife.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Give me 1 second. Because they what? Say that again, Lexi.
They want control of their afterlife.
Because they want to control their fate and have a and be favored by God. Wait, and be favored by God. That, my friends, is a really thorough SAQ. So, I'm going to rewrite this so that you have a copy, or I would rewrite this so that you have a copy. Because you're going to get another one of these tomorrow. I'm going to add a little extension on. Something bad is coming, and they have no way of controlling it. Like they have no way of controlling a storm. This encourages the congregation because they want to control their fate and be favored by God. Whew. That. Kimberly, do you need to move closer? All right. That's a full SAQ. So, what you see below is how I will score your essay, or your chunk. It's not even an essay. How I will score like your SAQ. All of this should be written on your paper, right? It should be written on your other sheet that we were doing together. You shouldn't have to copy from mine up there. All right, so if you look, this is basically how I scored your letters too, your generation letters. Kind of have the pass-fail mark right there, right? I do give pluses or minuses, and it's plus or minus 5. So 4 plus, 5 minus, right? You're right in there. And if you notice, each one has a descriptor: adequate competence, reasonably consistent competence, and consistent competence. Notice that the 4 provides satisfactory of analysis, how the language conveys the purpose, and you are revealing an understanding of the author's purpose, not just giving me summary. Notice that when you move to the 5, it's effective analysis. Notice when you move to the 6, it's persuasive analysis. Notice the 6 is insightful. The 5 has reasonable analysis. Notice the 3 goes down to developing confidence. It's superficial or thin. The 2 is some incompetence, little reference or serious misunderstanding of the purpose. This, the 3 and below, you'll end up giving me more summary than purpose. Same way that I basically graded your letters too. Same rubric. All right.